Hello and welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El Rom.
And I'm Rivka Rand.
In our top story, talk of an imminent attack on Iran. Israeli media has been speculating that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is seeking a consensus from his senior cabinet to strike Iran's nuclear sites. This comes as members of the Israeli Knesset call on all government employees to refrain from making public statements on Iran as a matter of Israeli national security. A senior United States military official went on the record stating that the U.S. is very concerned that Israel may strike Iran to protect itself from Iran's increasingly ominous nuclear program. He stated that the United States was absolutely concerned about a potential Israeli attack and said the U.S. military is increasingly vigilant of activities in both Israel and Iran that could indicate military intentions. The U.S. military official reiterated that America has no intention of striking Iran. Hossein Ibrahimi, a senior member of the Iranian National Security and Foreign Policy Committee, told the state-run IRNA news agency that before Israel could take any action against Iran, they would feel our wrath in Tel Aviv. He said that the response to a possible attack from Israel would be crushing. Meanwhile, a senior Islamic cleric insisted that the talk of a strike on Iran is an empty threat and that the Jewish state is merely screaming like a scorned cat. The Iranian president, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, has repeatedly threatened to wipe Israel off the map, and many fear that as Iran nears its goal of nuclear proliferation, that the Islamic regime will strike the Jewish state. Rivka Rand has more on the story.
Thank you, Yochanan. The nuclear watchdog for the United Nations, the International Atomic Energy Agency, has released a report detailing the actual nuclear capabilities of Iran. The report, coupled with recent satellite photographs obtained by the IAEA, paints a very grave picture as to the reality of Iran's nuclear capability. In addition to satellite imagery, the IAEA report includes computer models of a nuclear warhead and reports of a large canister used for arms-related high-explosive testing. The report states that more than 10 nations have supplied intelligence information that Iran is secretly developing components of a nuclear arms program. Israel is concerned about information it has received that shows Iran has also been testing a nuclear warhead that can be attached to the Shahab-3, an Iranian-made long-range missile that could reach Israel's main infrastructure. The Shahab-3 is a highly precise weapon that has caused great concern among Israelis, especially in light of the information that it can now be armed with a nuclear warhead. Iran is said to have between 300 to 400 Shahab-3 missiles that it can fire at Israel.
French President Nicolas Sarkozy condemned Iran's nuclear program and said that France would not stand idly by if Israel's existence were threatened. He said that Iran's behavior and this obsessional desire to acquire nuclear military capability is in violation of all international rules, and France condemns very firmly the lack of respect for these rules. The Iranian regime demanded that the United Nations censor the United States and Israel, stating that the two nations have repeatedly threatened to attack Iran for its nuclear program, which Iran insists serves a civilian interest. The Iranian ambassador to Uruguay stated that the United Nations should condemn the U.S. and Israel for threatening Iran. He said that by doing so, the United Nations would prove to the world that it really belongs to all countries and is not controlled by a few specific countries.
After numerous warnings that the acceptance of the Palestinian Authority into UNESCO would harm efforts to secure a peace agreement between Israel and the Palestinians, UNESCO has decided to accept the PA. In reaction, the United States and Israel have frozen their annual contributions to the United Nations Education, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. The United States was supposed to give $60 million in November, which is more than 1/5 of UNESCO's annual budget. The Palestinian Authority will now receive full membership status after signing and ratifying the UNESCO Constitution. The PA is to become the organization's 195th member. It will be the first time that the Palestinians have achieved full membership status in a UN body despite not being a country. Ahead of the vote, U.S. House Representatives Kay Granger and Nita Lowry work on the panel that control the U.S. foreign aid urged UNESCO not to admit the Palestinians, citing that the U.S. is prohibited by law from granting funds to the UN or any UN agency that gives the Palestinian Liberation Organization the same standing as member states. In addition, U.S. law prohibits the United States from funding any UN body that accepts members that do not have internationally recognized attributes of statehood. Representative Granger stated that there are consequences for shortcutting the process, not only for the Palestinians, but for America's long-standing relationship with the United Nations.
U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton denounced UNESCO's acceptance of a Palestinian request for full membership, saying that any deliberation over Palestinian statehood must be made at the UN in New York and not through an auxiliary organ of the global body. She also reiterated U.S. objections to the PA's bid for statehood at the United Nations General Assembly, saying that a unilateral declaration of statehood at the UN could not replace direct negotiations with Israel. Israel's Foreign Minister, Avigdor Lieberman, stated that the acceptance of the PA into the UNESCO is a unilateral Palestinian maneuver which will bring no change on the ground, but further removes the possibility for a peace agreement. He also said that acceptance of the PA is in direct violation of UNESCO membership guidelines of participating nations and will hinder the peace process. Following its admission into UNESCO, the Palestinian Authority is already challenging Israel in international legal forums. The PA is accusing Israel of stealing Palestinian antiquities and changing the Islamic character of the holy sites in Jerusalem. Hatem Abdelkader, former PA Minister for Jerusalem Affairs, stated, "Now that we have joined UNESCO, we will take Israel to court for systematically destroying Arab and Islamic culture in Jerusalem. We are seeking to file lawsuits against Israel in international courts and bodies for stealing Arab and Islamic antiquities and assaulting Islamic holy sites. The Palestinians are also planning to ask UNESCO to declare several sites in Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria as international heritage sites belonging to Palestine, not Israel. Israel fears that if the PA were to gain control of these holy sites, Jews and Christians would be barred from them, and the archaeological artifacts within those sites would be systematically desecrated and destroyed, as we have seen with the Waqf's control of the Temple Mount and the PA's control of Joseph's tomb in Samaria. Palestinian Christians have voiced concern for their safety if these sites were to end up in PA control. Arab Christians have suffered greatly under the Palestinian Authority, and the Christian population in Israel is dwindling drastically every year due to the persecution from members of the PA.
A group of Jewish Israelis who were attempting to pray at Joshua's tomb became victims of an attempted terrorist attack when local Palestinians pelted them with large stones. One worshiper was left in moderate condition after the incident. IDF troops searched the area of the tomb for the attackers but have not arrested any suspects. A similar incident took place near the biblical city of Shechem, where 18 Jews attempted to enter Joseph's tomb for midnight prayers. The group was attacked by Palestinians, but they were able to escape unharmed. Violent attacks against unarmed Jews at holy sites have increased in recent months. The IDF is working with these groups to organize guarded tours into the sites, but it is difficult to obtain permission from the Palestinian Authority to enter the holy places within PA-controlled areas.
Despite several declarations of a ceasefire, southern Israel has been under a barrage of rocket fire for several weeks, and reports state that rockets have not stopped for more than a few hours. One man was killed and more than 19 were injured in the hail of missiles. Islamic Jihad has claimed full responsibility for the attacks, leaving some to speculate as to Hamas's role in the attacks. It is unclear whether Hamas is allowing Islamic Jihad to fire the missiles or if it is unable to stop them. The IDF has led several retaliatory missions into Gaza since the rocket fire began, using airstrikes to disable the points of origin of the rocket fire. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reiterated Israel's policy of strict retaliation against those that attack Israel, sending a stern warning to Hamas to cease the rocket fire. He said it is important to remember that Hamas is the ruling power in Gaza, and it is their responsibility to preserve the peace and to prevent rocket fire from the Strip, even if those launching the rockets are from Islamic Jihad. He concluded that Israel will prevent every attempt to shoot at us, and we will hurt anyone who nevertheless succeeds at launching rockets at Israel.
Stay tuned now for Ask the Source.
With your host, Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host Josh Reinstein, and we're here in our rooftop studio in Jerusalem in a beautiful sunny day. Our guest today is Dr. Naim Khoury, who is the senior pastor of First Baptist Bethlehem. Dr. Khoury, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you. It's good to be with you, Josh.
Well, Dr. Khoury, I'm a huge admirer of yours. You've been shot 3 times, your church has been firebombed 14 times, and yet you consistently stand with Israel. Where do you get the courage?
I think my courage comes from the Lord first of all, and because I do believe that God is with us and His promise to us, He will never leave us or forsaken us. That's why I'm going to keep standing with the people of this nation and with the Word of God too.
Well, the statistics are staggering. Since the PA took over in Bethlehem, the Christian population went from 90% to 15%, and the municipality went from 100% Christian to no Christians in the municipality. Why is the world silent by the constant murder, exiling, and torture of Christians in Bethlehem?
I think there are so many reasons why Christians are leaving in Bethlehem. First of all, the stress, the depression, the unemployment, the problems between different people in that land, and the control, try to be the control of Hamas in the municipality. And today it's less than 50% Christians in the city of Bethlehem today.
It's amazing, you know, Israel is suffering from mainline churches who are divesting from Israel. Yet in Israel, it's the only place in the Middle East where you have absolute freedom of religion. Why do you think that the mainline churches are being so critical of Israel, yet they're giving a pass to the PA, which is actually persecuting Christians in the PA authority?
I believe the reason why they do not understand what the Bible, when I say the Bible, I'm talking not only the New Testament, I'm talking about the Old Testament. And they don't have any clue of understanding what the Old Testament has to teach and has to say about the covenant of God with Abraham.
Of course, Bible-believing Christians are standing with Israel today like never before. We see support coming out of places like Egypt and Jordan and Lebanon. Why do you think so many Bible-believing Christians are standing with Israel specifically today?
I believe we are living in the last days, and I believe the growth of the fundamentalists, the extremists in the Middle East, the fall of so many Arab nations in the Middle East, that I think is scary, and that we should take that in consideration, that the future of these countries, I don't see is going to be well off.
Well, of course, you also have a network of churches all over Israel. How do Arab Christians view Israel and Israelis in general?
I believe when they do understand what the Bible has to say about the covenant of God with Abraham, and let me say this, not politically, I think biblically, when God made the promise with Abraham, and that promise was an everlasting promise forever and ever and ever. In other words, in very simple English, no one can change it, no one can erase it, and no one can replace it. In other words, there is no such replacement theology in the Word of God. I think that is the main problem among many traditional churches in this land.
Well, of course, in Israel, it's better to be biblically correct than politically correct. My question is, what can Christians around the world do to help with the plight of Christians in Bethlehem?
I think they need to really take in consideration to stand with the suffering ones. I'm not saying through the NGOs and all these organizations. I think they should have a personal contact with the evangelical churches, the evangelical leaders in Bethlehem and Judea and Samaria, for them to understand the full meaning why we should support the evangelicals in Bethlehem and in Judea and Samaria.
Well, the big topic in the news is the PA, the Palestinian Authority, going for a unilateral declaration of statehood in the United Nations. What would that mean for Christians in the Palestinian Authority?
I think in so many ways you find people opposed, you find people with, and those they oppose that, they're afraid to really announce it. And yet, the question is, what is next? Even if they have the recognition, what's next? That is the big question mark concerning that issue.
Well, you know, the big issue is the city of Jerusalem. I mean, that's the big spot of contention. There's only one Jerusalem. If God forbid Jerusalem was to be divided, what would that mean for the city of Jerusalem and Christians specifically?
I don't think that's going to work again for the divisions of Jerusalem and Jerusalem be divided, because I don't think that is biblically first. Secondly, to divide a city, it's a very, very difficult for both people to live separately from each other.
There are literally millions of Christians who are watching this show today. What message do you have for our audience?
My message to the audience, first of all, to pray for the peace of Jerusalem and to come and visit this land and be a part of what is really happening in this land, and pray for the believers who are really suffering from so many different angles, different circumstances, and stand with this land, because God's promise, He will never leave us or forsaken us. And I want to say that God who watcheth over Israel never sleeps, never slumber. Welcome to the city of David, the city of King of Kings and Lord of Lords.
Thank you, Dr. Khoury, for being on the show. Always a pleasure.
It's a great joy to be with you, Josh.
And thank you, viewers, for joining us at Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
Coming up next, Shining Light from Israel.
Always enlightening and educational.
What makes the miracles of Jesus even more miraculous? Standing where they happened, in Israel. Come explore Jerusalem, where Jesus opened blind eyes. Visit the hills of Galilee, where Jesus fed the multitude. Stroll through Capernaum, where Jesus lived and taught and healed. To learn more about standing where it all happened in Israel, visit www.goisrael.com. Come visit Israel.
You'll never be the same.
Behold, days are coming when I will return the captivity of my people Israel, and they will build cities, and they will settle, and they will plant vineyards and drink from their wine. I will place them on their land, and they will not be removed ever again.
Zionism, our national movement of return to our land, is all based on our history, on the Bible, on the area that our fathers walked. Living here in the Shomron, we are fulfilling the prophecy. We are living out the essence of Zionism.
I think the most inspiring thing is to look around you and you feel like you're a part of the Jewish story. Every piece of land, everywhere you walk, history comes alive.
Behind me is where the tabernacle stood for almost 400 years.
Breathing this air and standing on this land, you feel the connection not only to your father and his father before him, but all the way back throughout Jewish history.
Shechem, Shiloh, Beit El, Jerusalem, Hebron, Bethlehem, all of the activities in the Bible all occurred here in the Shomron and in Judea.
I live up on this top hill on the left house, And the most amazing story is that when we came to live and we started to dig and build a house, we found many ancient broken pieces of dishes of clay from the time that the people of Israel used to come 3 times a year to visit the tabernacle in Shiloh. We thought we are the first to be here, and suddenly we found out that 3,000 years ago, hundreds of thousands of Jews, our ancestors, were coming here 3 times a year, spreading all over those mountaintops and eating the sacrifice.
The beauty of the Shomron is unparalleled. The fusion of nature and urban, city and natural comes together in ways almost unseen in all of Israel.
In the hills of Samaria, we are not only at this moment in time, but we're transcending it altogether.
The authentic Jewish life has always been connected to agriculture, always connected to the land of Israel. And now as the Jews are now settling these hills of Samaria, there are over 1,000 dunams of olive trees, of vineyards that are now producing fruits for the first time in 2,000 years.
In the Ariel University Center, we have 24 academic departments in 4 faculties, from secular to non-secular, for Arab students to Jewish students. The 12,000 students are coming from all the parts of Israel. Only 15%, 1/5, are coming from Samaria and Judea.
The foundation of Judaism has always been education. In almost every community in the Shomron, there are institutions that are teaching boys, girls, men, women, academic, higher Torah education. Understanding the strategic importance of Samaria is key. Only 44 miles separate between the Jordan Valley and the Mediterranean Sea. Samaria is also a mountain ridge that reaches over 3,000 feet high and dominates Israel's coastal cities, where 70% of its population, 80% of Israel's industry, and all of its airfields and seaports are located. If Israel were to withdraw from Samaria, the country's width would be narrowed to a mere 9 miles, which all analysts say is indefensible borders.
What makes the miracles of Jesus even more miraculous? Standing where they happened, in Israel. Come sail the Sea of Galilee, where Jesus calmed a raging storm. Experience Jerusalem, where Jesus restored a paralyzed man. Explore Capernaum, where Jesus spoke a centurion servant into health. To learn more about standing where it all happened in Israel, visit goisrael.com. Come visit Israel.
You'll never be the same.
And time now for a viewer favorite, Torah Truth from Zion.
My name is Rabbi David Lichtman, and I'm from Eish Torah in Jerusalem. This week's portion is called Vayera. It's referring to chapters 18 through 22 of the book of Genesis. Unfortunately, in this week's Torah portion, there is also a very great tragedy, and that's the destruction of the city of Sodom. Unfortunately, this destruction is something which was an upheaval at the time, and was something which, according to God's justice, was necessary. Yet God decided to do something quite fascinating and curious. Before he destroys the city of Sodom, he turns to Abraham and says, I'm going to tell you what I'm about to do. In fact, God even has a little bit of a discussion with himself. Should I or should I not reveal to Abraham that I'm about to destroy the city of Sodom? And he decides, of course, that he will tell Abraham. And the question which we want to grapple with in the next moment is why? Why does God turn to Abraham and tell him about the destruction of Sodom, which is about to occur? He doesn't need Abraham's permission, and he doesn't look for Abraham's opinion, but he merely tells him what he's going to do. And that's a question of great, great interest and curiosity to many commentators. One of the great commentators from the Babylonian Talmud some 1800 years ago provides us with a beautiful and yet very fascinating insight into this particular question. Abraham was posed with the news of the impending destruction of Sodom in order to give Abraham the opportunity to respond, to elicit from Abraham a response. And that response from Abraham was a response of compassion, a response of mercy. These people are created in the image of God as well, Abraham said to God. And don't they require proper justice as well? Perhaps there are innocent amongst the wicked, and they should be spared. Perhaps the entire area should be spared for the just people who actually perhaps live amongst the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. What Abraham had done was to bring forward the aspect and the character trait which wells deep within all of us who were created in the image of God, that of compassion and mercy. That's the reason, according to these rabbis, why God told Abraham before he was going to destroy the city of Sodom, in order to bring out and further that character trait of compassion. Even the people of Sodom, who had demonstrated and proven that they were standing diametrically opposed to a God-oriented universe, people who were diametrically opposed to the concept of giving for the sake of giving and being godlike, even they are created in the image of God, and even they should be viewed with compassion and with mercy. And so the relevance for us is to take what we learn from the wisdom of the Torah and to try to internalize it and exercise it and live according to it. And so, if only we could bring out that quality, that character trait of being able to view every single human being on the face of this earth, regardless of their religious orientation, philosophy, ideology, as being created in the image of God and are worthy of the goodness, the compassion, and the mercy that we have to offer. What a world that would be should we come to view every person with the respect that's due them as being created in the image of God. I thank you very much and look forward to learning with you again next week on the Torah portion. Shalom.
That's all for this week's edition of Israel Now News. I'm Yochanan El Rom.
And I'm Rivka Rand. Join us next week for all of your Israel updates.